Hello, and welcome to the Change in Behaviour series, a daily-ish blog from us at Blis. My name's Alex Wright, and as Head of Insight, I'd like to share with you over the coming days, weeks, potentially months, some of the things we're seeing in our data that give us a bit more of an oversight on changing consumer behaviour, how this might affect brands now, and how it might affect them in the nearest future. While the crisis is unfolding, our team's busy monitoring patterns of consumer behaviour and seeing what the implications might be on industry. We'll bring you regular updates as and when new information comes to light for us, which does mean sometimes one day to the next might not follow a consistent or coherent thread of narrative. Because we don't know what's going to happen, the same as nobody really seems to know what's going to happen. So we're just going to muddle along as best we can. Bear with us. That's caveat number one, I suppose. And coming from a research background, I should share with you another couple before we really get into this. Is that I've never shared anything on social media, let alone created anything specifically for it. So if you don't like it and want to troll me, I'll probably never see it, so it won't matter. But if you would like to get involved in the discussion, have something to contribute, want to work with us or talk more about what we're seeing, then we're very open to hearing from you and would love to have that conversation. So the first thing we want to cover here is this, we're loosely calling it little lives. Like as consumers, since the real spike in the outbreak in the UK in particular, we're seeing a constriction of our normal behaviour. We're seeing a shrinkage of retail repertoires. And I just want to share a few slides with you over the next 90 seconds to show how this is manifesting itself in behaviour. This is the first time I've used Zoom, so we'll have to see if this actually works. Right, here goes. So we look particularly at grocery retailers. That's our bread and butter. It's mass participation exercise, or has historically been. High frequency of visit, lots of retailers, lots of interesting patterns in there. So something sector we really enjoy working with. And what we're seeing here, if we look back just about a fortnight to the 10th of March, what we see at the start is fairly typical consumer behaviour in terms of grocery. We see a spike in the morning, which is commuters, and a build-up to the day, which is commuters on their way home again. This is served primarily or overwhelmingly, disproportionately by the convenience sector. We see this pattern repeat throughout the rest of that working week, albeit with a shrinking of volume as increasing numbers of people are opting to work from home before that came an order rather than just simply advice. As the following week starts, we see a real drop in the morning commute section. So people are no longer going to work, but the behaviour still persists that people are picking stuff up on the way home or doing their shopping more towards the late afternoon and evening times. Throughout the course of that week, again, we see volumes decline, not massively day on day, but there is a shrinkage of visits. The number of visitors we're seeing throughout this period is relatively stable, in fact, but just the patterns of behaviour are changing. You can see the curves starting to flatten out as grocery stores are more accessible for more people for longer hours throughout the whole day. But the real interesting part, and I think this is where this period of crisis is going to be stage one for a lot of brands, is that we see loyalty increase from the start of the year. So we're looking at this in 2-week chunks, and by the end of the week, hopefully we'll have the next 2-week chunk that takes us from the 11th to the 25th of March. But what we're seeing across the board for grocers, so this is 13 grocery brands we're looking at, which includes the convenience iterations of Sainsbury's and Tesco's, for example. What we're seeing is loyalty increase from the start of the year, so that includes a little bit of the New Year period before people really got settled back into work. But this loyalty has been increasing, so anything around the 70 mark would be considered normal for us previously. And our definition of loyalty is just we see a device in that brand of retailer and not in another. So to see it increase from 69% at the start of the year to 77%, so an 11% increase over this period is quite astonishing. And we have 1 week's update, so from the 11th to the 18th, coming up very soon. So I don't want to spoil that story too much, but loyalty, although it appears to be plateauing here, really skyrocketed during that week. That was a period, there was a massive increase in new daily cases in the UK, where we jumped into triple figures and then very quickly, unfortunately, grew from there. When we add some different subsectors of the market, though, we see this pattern is not exactly replicable for all grocers. So we can see the premium grocers in yellow here seem to take a hit in terms of loyalty at the start of the year, apparently at the expense of discounters, although that could be coincidence rather than a correlation rather than direct causation. We'll have to go back and check. But they really spiked in terms of loyalty. Whether this is indicating people going for established, reliable brands at the higher end in times of crisis is something we can only speculate against. But the more obvious uplift is for the convenience stores. And they're the only sector of the market. So this is Co-op, Tesco Express, Tesco Metro and Sainsbury's Local, who increased their exclusive proportion of shoppers period on period. The big four obviously started from a higher base, so had less headroom to grow, but with the following week of data, so leading on from the 11th to the 18th, the big four really came into their own. Perhaps this is related to accessibility in terms of store count, range of products that are stocked there, and the fact that people now, without necessarily going to work as much, are gravitating towards these larger stores because of the presumed availability of stock. Just to see where this might take us next, what we're seeing is we're taking a look at a couple of sectors here. Grocery, so the period we have been talking about and up to the point where Boris Johnson advised people to go into full lockdown. Grocery shopper volumes were pretty consistent. They were pottering around the index we'd seen from early March. But in the last week have started to seriously decline. So the volumes of people we're seeing actually going to the supermarket are down, as a lot of this will be propped up through online shopping and also restricted group sizes going to the supermarket. What might have been a visit a couple would make or a family would make is now increasingly likely to be just one person from that household. That is it in terms of the slides we'd like to share today. And just the last couple of points, I think, in terms of how this is affecting brands at the moment. As I said, we're in kind of crisis mode at the moment. This is the same for consumers as it is for brands. All those well thought out, highly considered 2020 plans that had just been starting to come to fruition are pretty much out the window for us on our side, as well as the brands we're talking to. So this is the grocery retailers and the FMCG or CPG brands they stock therein. So hopefully we'll start to adapt to this new normal. Hopefully it won't be a new normal for very much longer. But the next wave out of this, where this loyalty, this increased loyalty we're starting to see across the board, though for some brands more than others, it will really be key in the stabilisation stage for a lot of these brands as consumers continue to look for reassurance and trusted outlets. Beyond that, it's incredibly hard to predict. We all know this. We're not in any kind of elevated position to predict better than anyone else necessarily. But beyond this, we think loyalty will form the bedrock of then increasing foundation as people we enter a recovery phase, hopefully, and people will start to become more promiscuous as shoppers, start to be looking to spend money, maybe depending on recession status and financial situations at the time, we will see people really go for big brands or be cutting back on that in favour of smaller basket costs. Beyond that, ideally, we're looking at growth for all these brands, but that could be quite a way off. We're talking certainly months, maybe quarters, probably more likely quarters than anything in the immediate term. But if you like this, stay with us. There's going to be more in the pipeline. You'll be pleased to know they're likely to be a lot shorter, as this is the first one we want to kick off with. But if you've got any questions, any feedback, drop us a line, get in touch. We look forward to hearing from you. In the meantime, stay safe and don't forget to wash your hands. Thanks very much.